Hi, everybody. It's Friday, and I know you've just been dying to tune in to another edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, the Big and Furry Bovine. Joining me, Jake and Brian and Rick, and probably about 6 viewers by the time all is said and done, as everybody has totally lost interest in Northeast Ohio sports because, for all practical purposes and intents, there aren't any. But we still trudge on because there's always news. As long as you have, it's no wonder that Greg Robinson had such slow feet. I mean, you would be bogged down by 157 pounds of weed, too. Where do we find these people? I sound like Seinfeld. Where do we find these people? Yeah, I mean,
who are these people?
Yeah, I mean,
how do they find their way to the Cleveland Browns? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'm going to sneak 157 pounds of weed through the Mexican border.
That could be an actual Mexican from Mexico?
I would divert funds. Just build the wall around Greg Robinson. Leave the Mexicans alone. Let's just quarantine
Better yet,
him.
make Greg Robinson part of the wall.
God almighty. I mean,
swinging. I could just picture him being a fucking swinging gate.
There was a second pro player too, right?
It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, there was like a special teamer for the Colts who also was with him.
I mean,
they went to Auburn together. They were teammates.
And then the driver, okay, Greg
Am I going to get paid for this?
No.
Are you sure it wasn't Cheech Marin driving?
Yeah.
Did they pull up in a 64 Impala?
I mean, what would be a better profiling case than this,
What was their vehicle? I cannot imagine how big that vehicle was.
Probably
it would have to be a Suburban.
Yeah, I would
with the size of Greg Robinson, it would have to be a fucking Suburban.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it was an absolute profiling case.
Either that or they were it's the fuselage of a C-130 trying to cross the fucking border.
There's an off-white windowless van that was found down by the river.
What, are you living in a van down by the river?
But at any rate, once again, it's like the Browns keep getting these people and they wonder what the problem is. And I hurt myself today.
And I love the headline that if found guilty with evidence, what do you need with evidence? You have 157 pounds of weed. I don't think there's any more evidence needed.
You realize that they could have seriously attached that parcel to any number of underworld figures and hidden the body underneath the Atlantic Ocean forever. I mean, who does something stupid like this? But again, it all happened after the Browns decided they didn't want him anyway. Gordon
would have done something like this.
Well, the interesting part of it was that DePodesta analyzed the way. It's an analytical thing. Discovered that 157, the price was wrong. I mean,
that's amazing. That's 10 more pounds than the playing weight of Gerald McNeil in 1987.
Yeah, was he coming into the U.S. or going to Mexico?
He was coming into the U.S.
Oh, but to say, okay.
At first, he'd be dead if he were in Mexico. That he would be rotting in a jail cell, and
they would be extorting his family for the rest of his whatever he's got left from his paychecks.
And that would be the only justice in the whole thing, is if Trump was right and the Mexicans really were rapists. Be like, okay, let's put Greg Robinson in a Mexican jail and see what happens. I bet he wouldn't move his feet quickly enough to get out of the way. All right, that's all we're going to...
There was a 75-year-old woman who was raped to death by an illegal here in Arizona. So,
hey, but
that's where he got that story.
There are priests though who've actually done worse, So
including burying their own fucking kids from the nuns.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's you don't hear much about Jewish rapists, I'm not gonna rape you if I have to pay. You know, that's you just you never hear about that.
The Hebrew Hammer.
Here is a headline on Cleveland.com that I just can't resist. Hi, Jeff Bach. You're the only one in the chat room. Congratulations.
Pick a seat, any seat.
You know how the non-mighty have fallen. Brown shouldn't let Kareem Hunt go because Kevin Stefanski can rejuvenate his career. You know, I just want to point out something. Just because he's using the zone blocking kind of scheme that really helps the running game, that doesn't help somebody who's self-destructive and fucks himself up by driving at 90 miles an hour and getting caught with weed. Consequently, there is nothing Stefanski can do to salvage Kareem Hunt's career in Cleveland or anywhere else unless Kareem Hunt is serious about salvaging his own career. Because right now, if anything that type of offensive line blocking scheme proves, if Crowell could get 1,300 yards, I'm not worried. We've got Nick Chubb, and we can find somebody who's fast who can run through a goddamn hole and who can outrun a lineman who's sucked into a play, a defensive end. I'm confident
they did sign a fullback from the Vikings who can actually do the blocking scheme. So,
yeah, I mean, at this point, this notion of salvaging his career, it isn't that his career languished in his one measly 8-game season with the Cleveland Browns. It's that he has destroyed his career every step of the way. So let's just get the story straight. You know, one thing I wanted to do, because everyone's now doing their mock drafts. Mock draft number 1 is always like my favorite. I'll be reading through Twitter and, you know, somebody says, I've got my mock 1.0 up where the Browns trade with 6 different teams. I'm like, you know, what is it? These people, do they have no life? They're like people at Trekkie conventions. You know, get a fucking life. What are you dressing up like these people for? Why are you walking around with tribbles, you stupid fucks? It's like, it happened like 50, 60 years ago. Stop it.
I mean, there's not even a pro day yet, let alone combine or any testing. What are you looking at?
You know, and nobody knows what could happen between now and then. But
if we have football, if we have a draft.
That's right. Nobody knows. But one name that is worth talking about initially is Isaiah Simmons. And because of the Browns' extreme need for a linebacker. And I think everybody on the panel would agree that this and the offensive line are the 2 primary needs of the Cleveland Browns. And you want to know how weak Greg Robinson was and why he couldn't hold off a pass rush? He had to hire somebody to lift the 157 pounds of weed, you know? And he couldn't even do reps with them, you know? Fuck him, you know? Couldn't you see Dee Podesta sitting there going, and how many reps did he do with the parcel? I just need to know that. I need to write that down here and put that in my Bowman brain. And don't ask me, a Bowman brain, I don't expect you to know. Do you know what a Bowman brain was, Jake? Do you, Brian?
Is it where you can remember facts and figures, but you have a hard time remembering other things?
No, the Bowman brain was the first calculator, hand calculator.
Oh.
People remember that. Well, who was it? Was it Hewlett Packard who made
Texas Instruments?
Texas Instruments. Thank you. But no, Bowman was the first one. It was called the Bowman brain. So it is such an old reference. It explains to you why my back and neck are deteriorating, because
you would have been better off using abacus.
Exactly. Wasn't that the name of a Genesis album?
Abacab.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Abacab. Which was actually the chords of the song, by the way.
Do you know what I discovered? Look, we talk about all kinds of things. I'll get back to Isaiah Simmons in a minute, who's better than Richard Simmons, by the way. Although he's not nearly as good in isolation blocking.
Possibly even Gene Simmons. We don't know.
That's true. But
Boots notwithstanding.
my Google Assistant, you can play a game called Song Quiz. And I mean, it's like, well, let's see what this is. And I get to pick my decade, the 70s, okay? This is what Mr. Moohead lives for. Mr. Moohead has mowed down 10 consecutive opponents. And they find opponents for you from places like India.
Bangladesh.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's like, how in the hell am I supposed to know who's saying
Uzbekistan.
Ring My Bell? Ring My Bell. I don't know this song. I don't even know what it means. But it's great, you know. And then sometimes, you know, your opponent is fuck you.
Hey, wasn't
from Georgia,
the T-Rex song "Bang a Gong"? Didn't they do the original version?
T-Rex did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who was the lead singer for T-Rex?
Mark Bolan. The
Very
late Mark
good.
Bolan.
Yeah,
What
didn't
was-
he die in like 1981 or something
he
like that?
died.
From a drug overdose.
Oh, I think in the 70s he died, didn't
I
he?
thought it was a car accident, but no, I don't.
Yeah.
Could be wrong.
He was not a Jeepster for anyone's love. And there's another great reference for you if you're a T-Rex fan. Isaiah Simmons. Oh, by the way, if you have a chance to play Song Quiz, it's really fun. They play about 5 seconds of, and the earlier questions are very easy because they sing the lyric of the song, so you have to know the name of the song. You have to guess the artist. But at the end, they start playing these obscure 5-second passages. I scored a perfect score one round. It was only 7 songs, but the 7th one is always a bitch, man. I mean, I don't mean like, no, it's not a female
A song
singer.
by the Rolling Stones?
Please. No.
Not that one,
Love
okay.
is a bitch. Da, 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 da. I would have gotten that one right too. No, it was ridiculous. They played a 5-second block of a song where the person didn't hardly utter a discernible word.
Yoko Ono.
No, no.
Are we down to punk?
All I could make out of it is it kind of sounded a little bit maybe Hispanic-y. Is that a word?
Hispanic-y.
Hispanic-y, yeah. I mean, it was like, what the hell is this? And so I looked at the phone, talked right into it, and said, "Before the Next Teardrop Falls" by Freddie Fender. And it's like, and it goes, booyah! You got it right. It's like, oh, thank you. I got a Stuart Scott out of it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun. Try playing it. It's different. Isaiah Simmons should appeal to the analytic side. I mean, there are a couple of things that are really desirable, all right? He has tremendous speed. And don't say Barkevius Mingo, because the early part of this will sound like Barkevius Mingo. But right off the bat, he's instinctive. He's really quick sideline to sideline. But he's also a very good run defender. And something that we haven't seen in Cleveland in God knows how long, he can cover running backs, tight ends, and receivers. He can cover like a safety because he has that kind of speed. In college, he's actually covered slot receivers man-to-man. He can run down the middle seam. Doesn't this sound like somebody you would want to have? He reads plays well. Yeah. Well, that should disqualify him from the Browns.
Yeah. Now they're going to go for an offensive tackle for sure.
I mean, he has closing quickness in the air game. He's athletic. He can blitz. And get this, he's a good open field tackler, and he hits hard. You know, so many times we get into this Greedy Williams conversation, like, well, he's the best pure coverage guy, but, you know, he's not that good a tackler. And I'm like, oh, can we move on, please?
So how soon till the Browns trade down because they don't take a player they should take?
Say again?
How soon till the Browns trade out of that pick because they're going to be dumb and not take a top prospect linebacker when they should?
Oh, I mean, this has been the history of, but right now, I don't think that this is the same scenario. The analytics people the last time around, the Browns were so bad, they had to build a roster And so they were trying to accumulate picks. And I understand that from Sashi Brown's perspective. But these guys can't come in thinking they're accumulating picks, for God's sakes, because this team is really in a win now must mode. They've got to get the above 500 here. They can't squander what they've got going. And, you know, he also can cover a lot of ground in the zone coverage, something that our linebackers just stand there and can't cover anybody and can't really get into the passing lane. And, you know, so the only real big weakness that this guy seems to have is taking on and shedding blocks might be a problem, okay? And there are other things, you know, his athleticism may not be, may be far ahead of his developing processing abilities. You know, and again, the pro game is so fast. There is an innate ability, and it's kind of like a quarterback to see the field, and the ability to process and decide quickly and, you know, to react in real time is something that could be a problem. There's some film on him where he doesn't look so great when he's playing up on the line of scrimmage sometimes, and he bid on option plays. He would kind of go aggressive one side or one way or the other, which could be a kind of a dangerous situation if you're playing the Baltimore Ravens. You know, and again, this idea of disengaging from blocks comes up on a couple of sites on the internet. But at 6'4" and 230 pounds, we question right off the bat his weight, his size. He will get stronger as a pro, but his length and his speed can't be questioned. And you need somebody who can hit. You need somebody who's going to lay a lick on somebody and really get other players fired up and involved. I mean, the prototypical linebacker, if you're staying with a 4-3 defense, which they say they're going to do, that middle linebacker can't be Joe Schobert. All right? That's not, I mean, when you talk about Schobert, it's not, no rap against the young man. He's smart. That's what I'll tell you. He's smart. Well, he's smart. He's making millions of dollars, and he's getting driven backwards, and he's too light to play the position, and nobody fears him coming across the middle. So right off the bat, I'd say, you know, you got to have somebody whose presence is seen there with that length and, you know, and the ability to cover a tight end is something that, you know, when you're looking at teams like the Ravens, teams that you're going to be playing, and the utilization of some of the better playoff teams in using their tight ends.
Well, even Pittsburgh is real big on using the tight end over the middle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big problem when you don't have somebody able to cover the tight ends. And we were giving up big games to tight ends week after week because we just didn't have any coverage. And Kirksey, even if he's healthy, is not a good coverage linebacker. So, you know, this is a position that is, and I'm keeping my eye on this guy because the question, and maybe you have an opinion, Jake, is will he even be on the board at number 10?
I think it depends on what happens with the Lions, honestly. Because the Lions could probably trade back if they're looking linebacker and probably take him. Right?
Or move ahead if they want to try and get a quarterback.
Right. But if they trade back, I think they're going to look for just the best guy on the board and go with Stafford. So if they go to 7 or 8, they'll probably just wait it out, get him there, and probably steal a first-round pick for whoever goes up to get Tua.
Yeah. Ron, how you doing? I will throw this in. If Tyson Fury is smart, he will move, he will fluster, he will use reach and awkwardness, and Wilder's natural desire to clobber people the only way Fury wins the fight,
Try to catch him leaning.
well, not even that. I mean, Fury is saying, I'm going to get him in the early rounds. And this is all to get Wilder to come out and go ballistic, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearn style, come out of the corner, just firing everything. Wilder punches himself out. He fights in spurts, and he can get tired. And I will tell you something, Tyson Fury is in far better shape this time than he was the last time, where he looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy and managed to get up from the hardest, right-left thing that you've ever wanted to see. I can't believe he got up from that. Nobody could believe it. History says a man who gets knocked out, and he did not get knocked out, although it was damn close, I would imagine, that they usually get plastered the second time around. But I'm not sold on two things about Wilder. His fighting in spurts, nobody can question his power, but his chin. And if he's fatigued and Fury is in shape, look out for the deep water. That's what I'll tell you. Because I saw Tyson Fury interviewed. I've looked at his body and the way that his weight is now situated on his body. And unless he overtrained and ends up stale in the ring, this, if it goes later in the fight, could be a surprise ending. It could be. I don't think Tyson Fury is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that Wilder is nearly as great as what people say. I think he's a fighter that people will pay to watch because you don't take your eyes off it, because if you blink, you're gonna miss the punch that ends the fight. I get that, but boy, I've seen him tire brutally in fights, and if he's in there against a guy who has the 6'7" height and can get inside him and push him around a little bit when he's fatigued, it might be an interesting conclusion. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not buying the fight. I mean, I'm not paying for that shit.
I'm wondering how they gave it a draw the last fight, because Fury won at least 9 of those rounds, regardless of the knockdowns. I don't know how that was a draw in any way. Wilder lost that fight, in my opinion, pretty
He wasn't
clearly.
busy enough, and he fought in spurts. And
I don't know. They gave him the draw to do it again, I think. I really do not think that he was a close fight at all last fight. But
well, I mean, Fury's got to take him out to win the title. I mean, I've always been, unless it's just so lopsided, I'm always a believer that you go in there and you take the champion's belt. You don't leave it up to the judges. And the problem with Fury is that although he has knockouts on his record, a lot of them were against tomato cans. He is a guy who really is awkward, kind of moves herky-jerky, and he's not an outright aggressive guy. He's kind of a ponderous puncher. He's not a crisp puncher. And the problem that I have with Wilder is that he's a wind-up kind of guy. He's not, George Foreman knocking out Michael Moore. It's like it travels about this far. That was literally the perfect example. They said that Joe Louis had a 6-inch knockout punch, and Jimmy Lennon Jr. has less than a 6-inch penis. But this guy, I mean, he's like here winging it from, somewhere out in Parma. And, if you can catch a guy in the midst of, really roundhousing something and get in something short, you have a good chance. The problem, though, is that Fury's kind of a ponderous puncher, too. So, at any rate, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So what do you think? Do you think he's going to go top 10, Jake Simmons?
I think so. I think he might go earlier. The combine could say it all. If he runs a great 40 and he's a linebacking prospect and is a smart player, he'll jump the board, especially for a team like Detroit, who does not need a quarterback and probably won't take one.
What were his vitals again?
His what?
His vitals?
You mean his heart rate and his blood pressure?
I think you said 6'3", 230?
6'4", 230.
Yeah.
6'4", 230.
230, yeah.
with the NFL weight, he could probably get to 260 pretty comfortably.
That's almost the same size that David Fulcher used to be. Big safety for the strong safety for the Bengals.
If he hits a 4.40.
And say the 40 could be a deciding factor in that combine.
If it's in the 4.5s, I don't see how he stays around too long.
Yeah, and that's going to be the problem because trade up to get a guy, you got to be awfully sure about that player. But then there's the offensive line issues, and there are two guys here that are being talked about initially: Josh Jones out of Houston, and I'm sorry, Mekhi Becton out of Louisville, and the thing
or as Levine calls him, Mekhi.
Who calls him that?
Les Levine.
Less is more. Don't get me started with Les Levine. I've already had enough problems with him in my podcasting career. He hates me. Don't ever mention my name. I swear to God, if you say Mr. Moohead to him, he's going to freak out. He will. He hates me, and rightfully so. He deserves to. He's absolutely right for hating me, but I'm still thrilled that I did a parody on him and got him reprimanded at his job when he was working for the cable station. What was that TV station that he was doing a show on? It was like the Time Warner channel or something like that. Yeah, I had the misfortune of seeing it, and it was kind of, I had heard through people I knew that he was a real prima donna and that the people on set were, not real pleased with him. So I did a parody of him on the air, and he was Les Levine. And
Divine.
and
complete with feather boa.
I took on this kind of voice, and he was so condescending, and he would insult the cameraman. Could you zoom a little better on my face, please? And I mean, it was insulting. Well, the thing that made it so good, all right, this is my crowning achievement in all my podcasting years. This is my favorite story. I thought I was just doing it, and a couple people would get a kick out of it. Somebody gets the audio and brings it to work at the Time Warner channel, if that's I think that was what he was doing at the time, and brought it in. And his boss called him into the office and said, Les, I think you ought to hear this. And forces him to listen to this shit in front of all the cameramen and all the people. And the camera people were like, they were loving it because they fucking hated him, okay? And his boss said, you know what my concern is? If this guy out there, and I don't know who in the hell he is, and he's not even from the area, and he knows this about you, we have a problem. And so they dressed him down, man, and told him to become contrite, kind of like Myles Garrett, Crawl
He
for
still
your
enters
job.
shows the same way, so.
Yeah. And he never forgave me for that. I can't imagine why. Fun stuff. Josh Jones, the offensive tackle of Houston, I don't get this. I mean, I'm looking at a number of sites, and here's what I've accumulated. His footwork isn't really that good. False steps, working out of his stance. His feet, while fluid and light, allows for suddenness in mirror situations, but he's guilty of resembling a dog chasing cars.
Woof.
So sounds like Robinson.
And he overreacts to hands and head fakes.
Look over here.
He's got requisite length to play on the outside, but he doesn't have exceptional extension to ride rushers out. But he's got ample mobility and athleticism to at least stay sticky. No. No. While his athletic ability in the open field is very, very impressive, but his feet consistently result in being in too narrow a base, and he gets knocked off balance. And he doesn't provide the right kind of resistance, and that you can't have at this level. There's just no way. Then he's got a really nice snatch move, and so does his girlfriend. It's really.
So he grabs the jersey. He's really good at holding.
Yeah. If I make one more sexual reference, I'm fearful that Elizabeth Warren's going to come on and get angry at me. God, I mean, it's like I'm trying desperately to figure out for the life of me why Elizabeth Warren is. I mean, she's very, very angry, and she's, something? I would not.
Did you watch that sad sack video she made where she's trying to drink a beer and make it look casual?
She was drinking Rolling Rock too, which made it worse.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No. And
I don't
it's
usually
this whole
drink, but when I'm lying, I drink Rolling Rock.
yeah. And she has her husband come home, and it tries to have this whole sort of impromptu conversation, but you know that it's so fucking staged. It's terrible.
Is she squinting into the teleprompter or what?
Yeah, the most political I'll ever go
not
is...
only... Well, no, she's rehearsed her lines so much that she kind of staggers until she remembers the next line. And then
you see a picture of her, and imagine how her voice would sound. It fits perfectly.
Yeah.
Like her voice is so squeaky, I could just see that. That's the voice she would have without ever hearing her speak.
I would rather vote for Gerard Warren. Okay.
Warren Beatty or something.
Because you know that Gerard wouldn't fuck with your guns, okay? That you know for sure.
Well, what was the Warren who was a president?
Harding?
Warren G. Harding.
Oh, there you go.
Or was he the one who hit Nancy Kerrigan in the leg?
Oh,
Ron Harding. I'm sorry.
That was Tanya.
Sorry.
Warren G. Tanya.
So Oprah's
No, that
not
was
running?
Jeff Goldblum.
So
According
Oprah
to
changed her mind. I'm just wondering.
Right.
Oprah changed her mind. She's not going to run.
That was great. Tom Brokaw trying to say Galooly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Glowly. Mushmouth. But then, so Josh Jones, I can't imagine being the kind of guy that, then I'm looking at Mekhi. I'm looking at Mekhi, and
not Pfeiffer.
This guy is 6'7", 369 pounds. He's going to die of a heart attack before he even makes it in the league. And
maybe he should go WWE. Vince likes big giants. They could hire.
Yeah, I mean, Big John Stud. I mean, the thing with this guy is he gets at the college level.
No, it was John
anyway.
Henry. That was the wrestler.
Yeah, the thing is, if he gets his hands on you as a run blocker, and at the college level, he was devastating, okay? And he also holds a solid base and anchors extremely well in pass protection. And he clears out space as a run blocker. These are the good things you want to hear. But his ability to move again. He has some issues moving his feet quickly enough. And this just, if you're looking for a left tackle in the NFL, it's not for long, Jerry Glanville, if you can't move your feet very well.
What's his length?
He's 6'7". So
he might be able to punch a little bit, like punch with the left. and buy some time. But if he doesn't have great length with it, like reach, I don't know what he could do.
Yeah, I don't know what his reach is. Haven't gotten
It's
into
probably over 7 feet.
that. You know, they're saying that come combine time, that he will actually lift the combine and
No, he'll be pulling the combine.
yeah,
It'll just be a giant piece of farm machinery.
Well, it'll come down to his 40 time, right? All down to his 40 time.
well, they're saying that he's going to have to come in lighter at the
He'll be the one
combine.
wearing the John Deere hat.
Yeah, but I don't think a guy that big is going to run that fast. And you know, I know the Browns really want to run inside with Chubb, but the fact is you've got to have somebody who can move their feet outside to protect against the pass rushers. It's you know.
A speed rusher is going to present a problem to him, you would think.
Yeah, and so
Or a spin move.
Yeah.
His weight goes one way, a lot of weight to move back. You do not want to have somebody that could change direction on him.
yeah,
Or if
so-
somebody used a club on him, just hit him in the off shoulder, and catch him leaning, and there he goes, 7 yards out of the play.
But in the early going, these are the two offensive tackles who are at the top of the crop, and none of them could even be interpreted as a number 10 pick in the NFL draft. I mean, and I don't think there is an offensive lineman who the Browns would need that would go at that level. The linebacker may not even be there, but we need a linebacker badly, and I don't know, we need an offensive lineman too. And I don't know. I mean, and you're not going to trade down for talent that's going to start immediately. That we've learned from all the other exercises in the futility of analytics, is that you can get more picks, and then you go ahead and you pick a guy number 33, and he never plays a snap for you on the offensive line at left tackle.
Or as I like to call it, he's kind of, sort of under the certain light. Maybe could he? Yeah, I don't know. Not quite good enough.
They haven't mentioned that Worf, that tackle from Iowa. Then his
That's
name
one
hasn't
who's
come up.
on the Browns' radar, supposedly. I don't know much about him. I was gonna, I saw some crawlers, at the bottom of the screen going by that there were people predicting that would be the way the Browns would go. I'm gonna look up more information about him.
I've seen him along with the other two that you mentioned. Those were the three that they say that the Browns were focusing on. So.
And Ron asked another question: will Cavs win the game with new coach? Yeah, I mean, first of all, I wanted to look up, JB Bickerstaff and see that he was basically 33-49 with the Grizzlies in his only full year as a head coach. And JB Bickerstaff is the kind of guy at 40 years of age, who's been around the game, who wants his shot. He is the African-American Randy Whitman and wants his shot at being more than just an assistant coach. He wants to be a head coach again. And this is the kind of situation you end up in.
Well, and he's the son of, so he's more like Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't speak for how good a coach he is or isn't, whether he has the ear of the players because he's been in the league at least longer. Beilein's a guy who I give a lot of credit to. You can't blame a guy for trying. He acknowledged that he was in over his head, and if you're in over your head and you're working for Dan Gilbert, even if Dan Gilbert had 13 strokes, he would make your life miserable, okay? Ask Ty Lue. Both men have cited health problems when leaving the organization because they have tremendous amount of meddlesome interference from the owner of the team. It makes the job extremely demanding. And only somebody who wants to get into the fraternity of coaches, of head coaches in the NBA, would take a shot at this. But all credit due to Beeline, he left with grace and he accepted just pay through the end of the year and didn't try to hold Dan Gilbert's feet to the fire over this 5-year deal. And I don't think he was ever going to coach for 5 years, and I think that was already discussed with him. They were grooming Bickerstaff, but the fact that they didn't believe that he was ready, compared to a guy who'd never coached in the NBA before, that'll tell you something. And it's not anything really good. As far as games, how many they're going to win, I think we said 21 to 22. And, this is more an illustration of, it wasn't just the young guys, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, who were just turning the ball over, and, Jetty Osmond, who is, Mr. Sticky Fingers, not. And it was the veterans. It was Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson, who clearly were at odds with John Beeline. And if anything, the young players look to those guys because Tristan's won a championship and Caleb won a championship, and that's what they aspire to do. And if those guys are bad-mouthing the head coach, it's a bad situation. So this will tell you that no matter how much money they paid to Beeline, it's not nearly as much as what they're even paying Colin Sexton. And there's no reason a 19, 20-year-old kid is going to listen to a guy. And really, Beeline's tragic fault was that he got pissed off at these young guys because they weren't working hard enough. They weren't watching enough film. Do your homework, Timmy. He became a droning pest to a bunch of young millionaires who don't know how to play the game and don't know how to win. And it is the problem that virtually every coach now is going to see, that that Steve Kerr is seeing now with the injuries there and the caliber of player he's got to work with. It's a thankless job. And I don't know. The Cavaliers, I don't see them as being, the one thing I can say about Tristan Thompson, his first game coming off the bench, and boy, he made it a big one, and he showed that he was going to continue to work full effort that way. There was just no market for a guy who has no shooting range, so he proceeds to nail a couple of threes. I almost died. Tristan Thompson hitting, what was it, three-point shots? I just wanted to die. I mean, it's obviously something that he's worked on, and I give him credit for that. But I don't think the Cavaliers are a threat to do very much. And they are playing tonight if you're interested. The other thing, talk about basketball, is the 76ers. Yeah. Rick, go ahead. Say what your face is saying.
What? Yes, well, I didn't realize they had the best player on the planet. Thank God he told us that. But still, okay, you didn't have Simmons, but you had to still go into overtime to beat the Nets without Kyrie or Kevin Durant.
Yeah. Yeah, he beasted on who?
Please, try not to gloss over that,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jake.
The thing with the Sixers, and I don't ever see it working, is if you have a traditional big guy who is your main scorer, you need 4 shooters around him at all times to give him the space to work. And Simmons will not give him the space to work. Just as they can always double off Simmons. So I just don't see that entire franchise working together with the talent they have. You have to get rid of Simmons or something. You need a shooter there to give him space.
Well,
Prove he's the best player.
That's funny about this whole thing about Joel Embiid saying he's the best player in the world is 39 points, 16 rebounds against who, And he says, "Oh yeah, I just decided to bump and grind down low, and I didn't. I decided not to take the outside shots." Well, that's because they had nobody who could stop you down there. But I mean, if he has to bang with Valanciunas, or if he has to, for any guy who's a big kind of guy, he runs away behind the 3-point line. That's not the best player in the world. I mean, and the 76ers.
He's not even the best player on his team.
Well,
he still has trouble trying to share the ball with Simmons.
Well, Simmons is not just killing him; he's killing Al Horford too. I mean, this whole thing that's going on right now between Brown, the coach of the 76ers, who I think is the wrong coach. I don't think that this guy, since this whole, what do they call it, the process was created, they don't go anywhere. And Al Horford is a guy who had a choice between Boston, which was to get excoriated by racists, or to go to Philadelphia where they had young stars. And so he chose Philadelphia. Logical enough. $100 million worth, really logical enough. But like I've seen from Al Horford playing against him in the playoffs year after year after year, he's no spring chicken. And I don't know why in the world somebody paid that much money to him. And and the funny thing is that when he is on the floor replacing Embiid, their margin of winning is greater than when Embiid's on the floor. The problem is when they're on the floor together. I mean, it's like they're like per 100 possessions, like negative 2 point something together. I mean, it's bad. And for a guy who's a previous All-Star, Al Horford can't find his spot on the floor because it's like Tristan Thompson squatting in the territory in the lane. It's kind of like very difficult when somebody draws traffic into an area that you like to work in. And Horford has always been a kind of an inside-out kind of guy. He would have been much better utilized in Boston than he is in Philadelphia, having to deal with, a point guard who wants to be more down low, an Embiid who would rather be behind the 3-point arc, but still congests the lane. And because he had success in a meaningless All-Star game, proclaims himself the leader of the free world.
Yeah, he ruined his chances in Boston when he took Kyrie's side. He was pro Kyrie when no one else was on that team, and he said these young guys have to learn how to win from Kyrie, and the whole team turned on him, including the coaching staff. And,
Brett Brown is saying he still has faith in Al Horford, but does Al Horford have faith in you, Brett Brown?
I think he also has a seat for Al Horford.
You're paying him 4 more years. You're paying him 4 more years, so you better have faith in him.
Yeah.
So.
That's it's 4 years worth of faith. You better pony it up.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm less than impressed with the team, and right now, and I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, as good as they are. It's fucking Budenholzer. His teams are always good during the regular season. You got to look out for this, because when they allow more hands-on defense, that little whiz the ball around kind of game becomes more physical, and Budenholzer's coaching style goes down the crapper in that situation. He consistently, you remember, they always had a better record than we did in a lot of cases going into the playoffs. They couldn't beat the Cavaliers, save their soul. Once the postseason began, the physicality of the game became much greater.
Yeah,
Giannis was fine, but you shine the bright postseason spotlight on the other 4, and they just freeze. Giannis will still get his 30, 35 points. The other 4, who you couldn't pick out of a lineup anyway, they'll freeze up.
Is Middleton their number 2? And he's a borderline starter, good shooter, 3-D guy.
He's playing lights out this year.
Yeah.
Playing lights out, and it makes you wonder, can he continue to do it for a full season and into the playoffs? He didn't in the past, but having this wide open, bomb away from 3-point range, open the floor up kind of offense has helped him, and it's helped the team score a hell of a lot of points. And it's just going to be interesting when it really gets to the bump and grind of the playoffs. What's going to happen?
Makes you wonder if Jabari Parker stayed healthy, what they could have done.
Yeah, I mean, Jabari Parker, though, wouldn't know defense if it was rammed up his ass sideways. I mean...
the Matador,
yeah, just... and then this. How is it possible that if a player says bad things about the Astros when he left the organization, that he deserves death threats?
Yeah.
What is it about this whole society of, well, when you're brothers in arms, you're a fraternity, and I don't care if the officer raped the woman. If you witnessed it, you keep your mouth shut because that's the blue shield. I've never understood the mentality of why acquiescence and silence in the face of wrongdoing is rewarded, and somebody would get death threats for speaking out and saying it was the wrong thing to do. I don't get it.
It's that whole snitches get stitches mentality.
Yeah. I don't understand, but yeah, he's acknowledging that he's received a bunch of death threats.
Is that the Mike Fears? Was he the first one? Was that who you're talking about?
The pitcher at Oakland now.
Yeah. I mean, it's
not like he's going to get beat at the plate until he plays a National League team. And the National League teams, heck, they're probably siding with him anyway because they're the ones that would have to face the Astros, especially if he's facing the Dodgers. So
well, those pitchers are going to have issues because the fellow pitchers who are getting lit up in this cheating scandal because of it all have now the chance to say, you let us get lit up. You hurt our stats. You hurt our contracts. Right? I mean, how are they going to respect them? Yeah. Knowing there's a pitcher brotherhood probably, like, you knew you were cheating and you hurt our numbers and hurt our contracts. Like, there's something going on there with the re-signing of these players where they're going to have to live with that.
Do you think that Altuve in Game 1 is going to be thrown at?
No.
Either him or Correa.
No.
Defending him. They said immediate ejection if you're throwing an Astros player.
Yeah.
But which is ridiculous.
They set a line as to how many is going to get hit this year. I think they've set the line at like 83.
Hey, Mike Trout said he's in favor of throwing at these players. And Mike Trout doesn't say anything. So...
Yeah, I mean, I'm never in favor of taking a ball that you hurl 95 miles an hour and throwing it at somebody just for the simple reason that the same thing about why they put netting up around, the extended out on the baselines, is that a ball that comes off a bat at the speed that it comes at, a lot of times it just bounces off something or, but it can hit somebody in the head and kill them too. And you don't want something like that. And I think it's irresponsible talk on the part of players if they're saying, oh, we're going to throw at these guys. There is a way of dealing with them, and there are little things like, if Altuve's running out something for the first baseman to trip him, there are things that can be done.
Or double plays. If someone's going to second, right there, just wait for him.
Perhaps an errant throw.
Yeah.
It's a good thing they don't have to play against Ty Cobb. I wonder how many of them would have to go to the fucking emergency room because his cleats got ripped him up.
If you give up a run, if you're the catcher, by blocking the plate and just Ray Fosseying him.
And also, how is Correa getting away with this? No one's talking about Carlos Correa at all, and he has probably benefited the most from this.
I see today the Big Poppy was chiming in too about fires, and I'm thinking, shouldn't you wait till they get the final decision on what happened to your team? Because I think they're still having a little discussion about cheating over at the Red Sox table.
Well, I mean, the definition of being a good teammate, is keeping your mouth shut and keeping secrets to the grave. And, I don't particularly think that's the best way.
Yeah.
But,
If Houston was that good a team, why did they have to cheat to begin with? I thought they were a pretty good team.
And the Yankees were cheating too.
Yeah.
They were caught using Apple Watches and texting. They were texting, if it was like, for example, between a changeup or fastball versus curveball, if they would have a sign where we're going to text your Apple Watch, you're going to know it's a changeup or fastball. And they were cheating a couple years doing that as well. So they weren't clean either. It's just not as bad, apparently, because it's the Yankees and they don't want to expose New York Yankees.
Well, they got people talking about baseball, but unfortunately for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I'm just looking at this. It's crazy. Do you know that Bernie Sanders has been told that Russia is trying to help his campaign?
God damn it! The 30 years too
take
late.
your rubles. Yeah.
Is he going to haggle?
Yeah, exactly.
He should wear a suit with that's got a big hammer, a red suit with a big hammer and sickle on the back of it.
And now Bloomberg is releasing women from the confidentiality agreements.
Oh, good.
I mean,
Yeah, can you believe he actually told a woman that she should kill her baby in front of other people?
well, I mean, and it's
I
it's
can't
really
believe that, actually.
well. There were a couple of stories that were unsubstantiated, and a lot of comments that he made, like "what a fine piece of ass you've got" and things of that nature. And of course, the way he responded to the attack in the city hall was embarrassing. I mean, it's like, well, I may have told an off-color joke or something. It's like, yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's unbelievable.
Oh, well, and then there's what he said about stop and frisk too. So, there's a laundry list of shit with him. So,
Do you think that somebody should ask Eric Bieniemy what the point of the Rooney Rule is? He has withdrawn his name now for the Colorado head coaching job.
So, stick
That
to the
means
NFL.
Steve
Wait it out.
Sarkisian also said no. Nobody wants to go to Colorado, and Bieniemy actually starred as a running back at Colorado.
Yeah, he could have had that job on a platter. I mean, all he had to do would probably been show up.
But I mean,
I don't know.
his name kept coming up as far as NFL teams for head coaching vacancies, but every single one of them went in different directions than him.
Do you think them winning the Super Bowl actually hurt him because he couldn't interview and he had to commit to a different job and they wanted to get their people hired? I feel like if they would have lost earlier, Robert Slaugh's the same way. Like, when you have to wait that long to interview somebody, you want to hire somebody sooner. You do not want to have to wait and strike out with these okay options. If those two top guys say no, you don't have a coach. It's too close to the draft.
Now, the last line of the article, right, because Mel Tucker, formerly associated with the Browns, left Colorado. He's taking the Michigan State head coaching job. There's a number of names that are interested. Brett Bielema, the former Arkansas and Wisconsin coach. Troy Calhoun, he's the Air Force coach. But the last line, who is serving as the interim head coach during this downtime for Colorado? You're not going to believe it.
it can't be Lane Kiffin.
No, this is a name that won't mean anything except to Cleveland Browns fans. And here we go. Darren Chiaverini. Yeah. I thought he died.
They should hire Mangini. His little genie voice, little rabbit voice just in the corner, dealing with college students would be pretty hilarious.
I think the coaches think
At least that would get him off the fucking air at FS1. Jesus Christ, that's.
I think they think the Rooney Rule applies to Mickey Rooney. They have to be a certain height. Maybe that's the problem.
Let's have a show.
Yeah, I must be at least this tall to coach a team.
Can you see
Come
that?
on, gang, we'll put on a show.
Cue Judy Garland.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
And Shirley.
and if you
Temple.
work hard, there's a pot of gold somewhere over the rainbow. It's
Yeah.
like,
Spit that cigarette out, Judy, and come on upstage.
Hey man, Lombardi would never have a job if that was a requirement. Was he like 5'1" or 5'2" or something?
was he really?
He was a short
fairly
dude, yeah.
tall, yeah.
He was pretty
Huh.
short. I know he was like maybe 5'4".
I didn't
'Cause-
realize that.
Peyton Manning and Brett Favre were in his house, like at the remember that classic picture he had of like the
Yeah.
Pistons players, and their heads were hitting the roof. So that would Peyton was 6'5", and his head was like right on the roof, and I would say Lombardi was a good 13 inches shorter than Peyton at that point.
Well, I always wondered, why Lombardi would walk around going, hi ho, it's off to work I go. Yeah, I never understood that.
Maybe he was
And
standing in a dollhouse.
thank you for explaining that to me. I appreciate it. Well, I'm done. I've said everything for whatever godforsaken reason I'm going to say today. And I'm going to look up Worth, and I'm going to look up some other guys who might be offensive linemen. But I'm looking at them not at number 10, folks. I'm looking at them as second-round people. And unless there's somebody who'd be so worthy, you might want to trade back up into the first round. But you need those two positions filled. So, or as Jenna Jameson would say, got 2 holes to fill and 3, really, if I'm in the mood. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. It's going to get cold here in Florida tonight, but after that, it will warm back up. The rest of the country, it's cold. Be careful if you're going
Not
out
in
there
Arizona.
driving.
It was over 70 degrees today, so
Well, that's good. That's good. Thanks, everybody, for
77 as a
tuning
matter
in.
of fact.
Windbreaker weather.
Yeah. Until next time, which is Monday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.